Right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Mr. Martin, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance today?
Would be my honor.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Would you please stand, place your hand over your heart and join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, sir. Quite welcome.
Okay, board announcements today. So the procedures for today's meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each agenda item. Staff will present on the item. I will ask for public comments and then ask for discussion and questions from the board members. Once concluded, we will ask for a motion and a second, and after any further discussion, the board secretary will call the roll for call votes. Okay, I believe all of our board members are here today and present. I think Mr. Peterson, you're here for Mr. Cooper. Good, we'll sign him up for lots of things since he's not here, not a problem. Okay, with that, I will move on to public comment. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments for items not covered on the agenda this afternoon?
There's none at this time.
Okay, having none then, we will move right on to approval of the agenda. Board, do we have any changes, additions, or modifications that you would like seen to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, the agenda is approved. We're humming right along. Okay, with that, we will move on to the consent calendar. I will ask again, Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment for consent today?
There's none online.
Okay, not online. Board, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Marks, motion to move consent.
I'll second it. Good sight.
Second by Goodside. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
When I call your name, please state your vote. Director Goodside,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Marks,
Yes.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Natoli,
Abstain.
Director Peterson,
Yes.
and President Gibbs.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 2.1 has passed.
Very good. Thank you, Uni. Okay, with that, we'll move on to our action agenda items. Item 3.1, the authorization of the completion of the Upland Monitoring Initiative. Mr. Vergoots, welcome, sir.
Thank you, President. Be here. Thank you, Uni. Great. Okay. Well, let's jump in. There's a staff report with your board package, and this is meant to be a wrap-up of this effort. So the Groundwater Sustainability Plan identified a number of data gaps. These data gaps came out of the stakeholder process and the technical process for developing the plan. For the most part, well, quick review. Water levels within the GDE area, we've largely filled that data gap with installation of piezometers. Now there's one we need to replace, and there might be one that we need to relocate. We'll address that after the hydrogeologic conceptual model's updated and we have a better handle on the subsurface. Second one, we've handled that. We had surveys of wells completed. Third one is it's handled. We have a monitoring program in place. Rick Vasilopoulos is here and he's in charge of that. The fourth one is the Upland GDE verification and assessment. We're talking about that today. The fifth one is domestic well water quality, which we can talk about a little bit later today. Okay, so with the GSP, there was concern about oak tree health during the GSP development. And it's important to point out to your board that it was a very dry period. 2 critical dry years. And at the time, the GSA team didn't see a connection that groundwater pumping could affect these upland habitats. We identified it as a data gap. And so we've worked to fill that. And I think we filled it. I think calling these areas upland GDEs was probably not appropriate. We're not seeing GDEs in these upland areas, but that's what it was called at the time. So in 2023 and 2024, we had I'm going to butcher his title. I think he's a professional arborist. Look at the trees. 3 locations near I-5, Stevenson Ranch. And then this last year, we looked at those 3 locations and then added a 4th one in Placerita Canyon. Trees show historic signs of drought stress, fire damage, but wetter conditions allowed the trees to recover. Oak tree root systems depend on soil moisture in the unsaturated soil, otherwise known as the vadose. Tree root depths are shallow. Estimates are all over the map from a couple feet to more. But the point is, these are not trees that require to be tapped into the groundwater table. We also looked at the geology. Sir Fraz and I went out to each of the sites. We've got a few geologic cross sections we'll show today, which we put together. We won't go into great detail on those. I won't read this. This is in the staff report, but we thought that it was very important to highlight. And the gentleman's name is Ryan Gilmore, registered consulting arborist. Okay. So we looked at soil and geologic information as well. So Quigley Canyon should be Rivendell Park, and Wildwood Canyon are all pretty similar in terms of the geologic terrain around them. Placerita Canyon is different. It's in a different area. It's up higher in the basin. The San Gabriel Fault is adjacent to the canyon area, and the rocks are a little bit more torn up in that area, which is to be expected with such a major fault running through the area. But for all these areas, groundwater depths is estimated to be on the order of tens of feet or more, deeper than the oak tree root zones or root systems. Now, with the alluvial system, as your board knows, when we have precipitation and that infiltrates, we can get increases in the alluvial groundwater level, meaning it becomes more shallow, the groundwater, but that's temporary. There's no indication of persistent high groundwater conditions in these areas. So on the map, you'll see the 4 areas surveyed. You'll see near Interstate 5, that's where the Rivendell Park is. A little bit further east is Wildwood Canyon, and then to the northeast is Quigley Canyon, and then further east is Placerita Canyon. We have a series of maps. These maps show in the green dots, the location of the trees that were surveyed by the arborist. And then the black lines show the geologic cross-section lines. Here's Placerita Canyon, a zoomed in view of Placerita Canyon. I made a note, we all want to know where the nature center is relative to this location. So it's a little less than a mile downstream from the study area. This area has a lot of uplift to it, a lot of faulting with the San Gabriel Fault, and a mix of igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks and some alluvium. The trees are situated not in the bottom of the drainage, but up above the drainage here. So these are 2 sections with Placerita Canyon. Quigley Canyon is the next location. So this is an interesting area, and they're all interesting, but this one is just north of the main stem of Placerita Canyon. So this is north of Placeritos, not the main Placerita Canyon. In this cross section, the magenta star on the right side is the alignment of Placerita Canyon roads. You can see we're 1 canyon over north. Similarly, the trees are up in the alluvium or up near the edges of this, or up on the slopes. This is a section that runs downhill into the valley. Wildwood Canyon, another interesting area. Similarly, we have the trees up high. You know, you've got to hike in to get to them. They're either up on the slopes or down in the alluvial filled valley. And similar with Rivendell Park. This is the one right near Interstate 5. Cowgrove Boulevard is there on the south. Here, the magenta star is Interstate 5. So again, these trees are uphill, and that's why they're called upland. So, and that's it. So we've done the 2 years of very detailed monitoring. We've determined that the oak trees are not groundwater dependent. They rely on water in the vadose zone. They're sensitive to climatic conditions, both wet and dry periods. Groundwater is deep, and we do not find that groundwater extraction can affect these. And so our recommendation is that we close this study and that your board authorize completion of this monitoring initiative. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Rick. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this item?
There is none.
Okay, very good. Directors, any questions? Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. President. By saying we're authorizing the completion, that simply means we put a bow on this and put it in the file, correct?
That's correct.
There's no more money to be spent following 2 years of what I call unnecessary expenditures by our ratepayers to complete these studies. Pardon me? Yes, I understand that, GSA, but as you'll see in the next item on the budget, all this money is coming from the SCV water ratepayers. So I've commented on this before, and I guess I would just ask, is there such a thing as an upland GDE? It seems contradictory to me, but I think the survey and the reports bear out the fact that these certainly weren't upland GDEs, and therefore it came out of a stakeholder input either at the advisory committee level or in public hearings following that. But I do think it was a waste of taxpayer money. But I appreciate the fact that we put this to bed and this will never come back again. So thank you for your work, Rick. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Martin. Director Tully, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a question. How will we incorporate this into our annual report and the next GSP update?
For the annual report, that's a good question. For the annual report, we'll identify it as something that we've completed. For the GSP update, my recommendation would be that we would remove it as a data gap, or at least clearly state that it's no longer necessary.
I would suggest we clearly state it's no longer necessary, just because it was an issue that came up for the original GSP.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Virgoots. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very good. Thank you, Director. Any questions? Director Goodside, please.
I know I sent you a late email on this, but alluvial groundwater depth tens of feet. I always thought it was like 100 feet. And I don't know what do we have ballpark on oak tree roots versus our alluvial wells?
The ballpark for oak tree roots, everything I've read, I've researched, I even talked to our arborist on it. They're typically very shallow,
Really?
on a few feet or more. They can be deeper.
Oh,
They can be deeper depending on soil. They
Mhm.
can be tens of feet depending on the soil, but generally those roots move laterally away from the tree, and it's a pretty thin
Hmm.
set of roots.
okay. And then our groundwater wells in the, I know there's not wells right near these trees, but in the alluvium, depth to groundwater is usually what, how many feet below ground surface?
And with our water wells, I hesitate to even bring those in because they're in a different part of the basin.
Yeah, they're near the river.
Right, but these areas, the underlying bedrock being so close to the Saugus Formation,
Mhm.
we're estimating that the groundwater levels are, 10, 20, 30 feet below the ground surface or
Okay.
more,
Okay.
depending on the area.
So nowhere near the roots.
Nowhere near the roots.
Okay. All right.
And forgive me, I talked to the arborist about that, and we wouldn't want them near the roots. If those roots are submerged, the tree would become unhealthy.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Director. Okay, seeing no other questions. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Director Natoli, second.
The motion and second for the recommended action. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
When I call your name, please state your vote. Director Gutzeit,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Marks,
Yes.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Yes.
and President Gibbs.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 3.1 has passed.
Very good, thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 3.2, the consideration to adopt the SCV-GSA fiscal year 2025-26 budget. Mr. Vergoots, keep it rolling.
Thank you, President Gibbs. All right, keeping it rolling. So this is our budget presentation, obviously. And okay, so similar format presentation as last year. We try and keep it pretty simple and straightforward. So one of the big changes with the budget this year, certain 24-25 costs were not called on or were deferred. We didn't spend, we were underspent by quite a bit last year because certain work wasn't needed, and we found other ways to save costs. Another big change this year, and it's really just an administrative matter, the capital budget, which your board adopted last year, we're not seeking your board to adopt the capital budget this year. That budget is squarely within SCV Water's budget, consistent with our administrative procedures. The work is will still be reimbursed by the grant. Today, we're obviously seeking your board's approval of the 25-26 budget. We have an operating budget with SCV Water administrative costs, so board meetings, presentations, keeping the lights on at the GSA, et cetera. Then we've got also consultant costs, including Mr. Bunn, who's with us remotely today. He couldn't be here in person. And then for the revenue categories, we've got the member contributions, which are $20,000 a year per member, grant reimbursements, and additional member contributions. For table 1, and it looks like I summarized this already, just in our discussion. So I'm going to skip this. One thing to add, table 1 also includes public outreach. So ad buys, website materials, those kinds of things. For consultant costs, for admin, our costs are slightly higher. We're targeting the same level for this year. Last year, we had higher legal costs. With moving into the GSP update, I think we'll be using more of Mr. Bunn's time. So I think holding those levels where they are is good. And then for the GSP implementation, I mentioned that our expenditures were lower this last year than budgeted. There are 6 highlighted budget items in the staff report. We've reduced the capital planning and studies placeholder from 150,000 to 100,000. We were able to reduce the Sigma Round 2 implementation budget to zero, we found that we could capture some of that work either within agency staff time or with other overlapping consultant work. The hydrogeologic conceptual model update, we had higher than expected costs because we realized we needed to spend more on that up front, and so that's what we did. So we advanced some of that work a little quicker than we expected we needed to. Because of that, we've had lower than anticipated costs for the technical support for addressing DWR's recommended corrective actions. The team here, including with consultants, have put together a pretty clear work plan on how we want to advance that to address DWR's comments. So we'll be putting that into motion pretty soon here. Outreach for the GSP 5-year update, we're targeting 50,000 for this fiscal year. So this would be to cover the first 3 workshops. And we've also have some money in the budget for initial drafting of the GSP sections. So the overall summary, the proposed budget rolls up to just under $927,000. It's a little more than our estimate last year. And it reflects some of the timing changes with expenses. So quick roll-up slide here. Proposed operating budget, $926,900. The main revenue sources, member agency contributions, contributions from SCV Water grants. The additional revenue required is estimated at $773,900. That would come from SCV Water under the Joint Powers Agreement. We also want your board to be aware that SCV Water has included this in its operating budget, and it will consider that budget at its board meeting tomorrow. And in conclusion, we've wrapped up this previous budget year. Our estimated 25-26 is similar to the previous estimate. The grant funded work on the monitoring wells, which is now funded through SCV Water directly, is ongoing. You don't see it in your budget, but it's ongoing. And with that, we recommend your board adopt the proposed budget and replace the administrative services agreements exhibit with the new tables. And I see a mistake. It should just be tables 1 through 3 on that. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you, Rick. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this item?
There is none.
Okay, hearing none. Directors, any questions? Director Martin, please.
Thank you, President Gibbs. Just a comment though, Rick, I want to thank you for the effort you made to lay out everything in such detail that we could follow each line in the budget tables. And really you pre-answered any question that I would have. So I thank you very much for your efforts, and I will definitely support moving forward with the budget. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director.
Quick, anyway.
Director Natoli, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just real quickly on page 67, item 3, this is table 2, surveying 12 to 15 existing or newly placed benchmarks in 23-24 and semi-annual monitoring starting 24-25 licensed land surveyor. The proposed fiscal year 24-25 was 15,000, and the estimated year-end fiscal year 24-25 is 24,000. Is the increase due to now using licensed surveyors? It's about a $9,000 increase. I'm just curious.
Right. I think our estimate was too low. I think that's why you're seeing the delta. We always plan to hire a licensed surveyor, but our initial estimate was just too low at 15.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Of course. Thank you, Director. Director Goodsite?
Couple of questions. And I want to follow up on Director Martin's comment about ratepayers or stakeholders. This is, a regulatory requirement and does cost the community members to have this implemented. So I want to thank you for finding ways to reduce costs where possible. That was nice to see. On the legal costs, remind me, I know we were doing issues regarding new well permits. Has that completely gone away or just reduced? What happened with that requirement?
No, it hasn't completely gone away.
Okay.
But the level of effort on that is very low right now. It is going to come up again as we advance our discussions with LA County about how to work on cooperatively permitting wells moving forward. But there hasn't been activity on that lately. The burn rate for Mr. Bunn right now has largely been, other than the routine work, Rick Vasilopoulos has been talking with him a lot about the flow meter program that the SCV-GSA is going to advance and discussions about authorities and those types of things. He suggested that this board ultimately might need to adopt a policy setting forth rules and compliance related matters for the rollout of the flow meter program. Right now, everybody's getting along. We're not sure we're going to need that, but that may come up as a future legal effort. And then, of course, with GSP update.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then the member contributions sit at 20,000 per agency as a base. Are those indexed to CPI or should we consider indexing them so that they just automatically, or would that not work because of the approvals of the other agencies?
They're not indexed to the CPI. And I think the last part of the question you asked, could it work if they were indexed based on the other agency approval processes? We'd have to run that to ground. That seems complicated, but just because it's complicated doesn't mean it can't be done.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't want to get too far behind because obviously, as we've seen, these costs keep marching higher. And, 10 years from now, what is reasonable now is not going to be reasonable in 10 years. So, okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, Director Hernandez, please.
Thank you. So again, thank you for the detailed report. I just wanted a little bit of clarification just for my understanding about how these coincide. On the estimated administrative costs on table 1, we have SCV water support with public outreach. And then in table 2 on page 68, line 16, we also have contract for outreach component for GSP. And, we've talked about this quite a bit and how it's been very difficult to engage our stakeholders and things like that. Can you tell me if those two items, first of all, are intertwined? And then if item 16 on page 68 actually has that engagement out to well owners?
They are intertwined.
Okay.
As it relates to preparing the GSP 5-year update. It doesn't directly, that 50,000 line item for the outreach is more for the global update of the GSP, not the well owner outreach. We plan to make well owner outreach part of that. For example, the efforts we've put forward with seeking volunteers up in certain canyon areas to allow their wells to be used for water quality. The initial outreach, we did it, but it fell flat. So we plan to keep making stakeholders know that that's something that we're open to helping them with. So I hope that answers your question.
So just to make sure it's clear in my mind, it sounds like it's within that $50,000 budget. We're hoping that'll be enough. More holistically, that engagement with well owners is part of the overall engagement. That's correct. I see you nodding.
Yes.
So, do you anticipate more costs associated with that engagement if we're again unsuccessful?
It's a good question. Right now, no. We're going to put a page on our website, just letting people know that this is something the GSA is looking for volunteers to do. Do I expect to get anything with it? Probably not. And then with outreach during the GSP 5-year update, we'll talk about it a little bit more. It's important we do that because when we put a bow on the 5-year update and submit it to DWR, we want to show that even if we don't get volunteers, we want to show that we've been working at it. So do I expect more costs? Not beyond that. You know, it could be a cost in the future that we want to install our own monitoring well up there, but I don't think that's a high priority right now for us.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Director Marks, please.
Oh, there are several guidance documents for the 5-year update that DWR has yet to release, even in draft form. Is there some contingency in the budget, in this budget, or is it kind of a wait and see thing, and we may have to come back and amend this budget?
The budget, there is a contingency in the budget. It's a global contingency. It's not for that effort.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Thank you, Director. Seeing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion from Director Martin,
I'll second.
second from Director Marks. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
When I call your name, please state your vote. Director Gutzeit,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Marks,
Yes.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Yes.
President Gibbs.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 3.2 has passed.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary. That'll take us to, we have here, item 3.3 for the designation of the SCV-GSA Board Voting Delegate for the ACWA election for the 2026-2027 term. Mr. Cole, how you doing, sir?
Thank you, President Gibbs. Doing very well. Give Rick a break. This is the easiest one. So just wanted to run through real quick. So the SCV-GSA is a member of ACWA, the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Insurance Authority, for its insurance needs. So as part of that membership, you get to vote on ACWA's leadership. So you need to be a member of ACWA to open up the insurance door through the JPIA, and then that allows you to vote for ACWA's leadership. So that's what this item is for, is to appoint Vice President Bill Cooper as the voting delegate for the Santa Clarita Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this item?
There is none.
Very good. Any board discussion? Nope. So we're going to put this on Mr. Cooper while he's not here, right? Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Mr. Peterson?
I moved to put Mr. Cooper.
Well done. We have a motion for Mr. Cooper. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
We have a second from Director Hernandez. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
When I call your name, please state your vote. Director Gutzeit,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Marks,
Yes.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Yes.
And President Gibbs.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 3.3 has passed.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary. All right, Mr. Cole, you can take a break. Item 3.4, the quarterly status update of the groundwater sustainability plan implementation. Mr. Vergoots, have the floor.
So this is our global quarterly update, if you will, and supporting the work that we're going to talk about here are some staff in the room, Rick Vasilopoulos, Surprise Alam, and Mark Amontado from engineering. Of course, I'll leave.
Excuse me, I can't hear you. Are you near a microphone?
The microphone was not turned on.
Okay,
Thank you
got
for
you now.
doing it. Okay. So let's jump in. So these are the key updates for today. We'll talk about the basin-wide well review, the deep monitoring well installation, the extraction reporting program, water quality monitoring, updating on the hydrogeologic conceptual model, and then we've got a chart with a look ahead for the GSP 5-year update. So one of the things that we received grant funding for is looking at well records in the valley. Surfraz is digging into those. Our whole team has actually, and we've had a number of discussions both with LA County and the Department of Water Resources. But we're finding there are a lot of problems with the records that we're reviewing. The bottom line is we're continuing to move forward on it. It is a grant-funded effort. We've told DWR that there are some significant challenges with bringing this to full completion simply because the information may not be available. So we'll keep your board updated with it. And we've learned a lot, and I won't go down the rabbit hole, but both in terms of how the state manages the records and LA County, it's a bit of a mixed bag. And there have been different ways things have been looked at in the past. And even at the state level, the state delegates this well permitting to counties, but the state doesn't have a clear agreement or way that it expects things to be done. The LA County group we've been working with on the well records is helpful, but a lot of their records are in a warehouse filed away. So we'll keep on it. This is a map that Surfraz and I think maybe even Rick Vasilopoulos put together. The orangish colored section on that is the distribution system of the potable water system in the valley. The green dots are estimated private well locations. And so right now we're focusing on San Francisco Canyon as a test case. Okay, moving on. Mark Amontado is here from engineering. I asked Mark to be present today. Mark is managing the capital project for the deep monitoring well installation. And Mark, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words or we can.
Sure, yeah, I can.
Sure.
Come up. Yeah, so we got the bids back last week.
Here, microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, we got some bids back last week. We got 5 bids as the slide shows. We're on schedule for the E&O, the SCV Water E&O committee for July, and also going to the board in July as well. But of those 5 bids, it appears that we have at least one that we'll be able to proceed with. And yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Rick, what was Mark, you mentioned one that you looked like you could proceed with. Which one was that on the map?
Oh, so this map actually shows 7
Right.
locations. The bid that we went out with is for 5 wells, actually.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, Mr. Marks.
What was the name of the?
I would
I've
not
heard
like
something.
to say that right now because it's not final yet, but
Thanks, Mark.
yes. No problem.
Yeah, Mark's been doing a great job. And one thing I wanted to point out to your board is it looks like we've got at least one responsive bidder. So the next step is going to be timing. So we're where we wanted to be in terms of the cost. We're not sure about timing yet. The schedule the grant schedule that ultimately came down from the Department of Water Resources for the grant is very, very tight. So we'll be talking with the Department of Water Resources pretty soon about how best to proceed. And there's a chance that we may not be able, if Department of Water Resources will not allow us more time for the construction, we may have to construct fewer wells. That's the bottom line. So we wanted your board to be aware of that. Okay, moving on. Director Hernandez, this is what we were just talking about. During the last meeting, Sandra Cattell made a comment, and Steve reminded me after the meeting in a nice way. He says, you know, Sandra mentioned she didn't get a letter. And I said, well, of course, no, she didn't, because she's not in those areas that we're targeting. So we wanted to show your board a map of where we've done the outreach. But no response, so we'll add a page on the GSA website, and we'll continue to make stakeholders aware that this is an option, and we'll reevaluate it as part of the GSP 5-year update. Groundwater extraction reporting, boy, these titles are lengthy. So this is flow meters, well registration, flow meters, and reporting groundwater extraction. Tara Bravo is on staff to do outreach for this effort. She's in the process of contacting the well owners. We have prepared a pretty detailed outline, script, if you will, for the workshops and the materials. Rick has headed that up, Rick Vasilopoulos. So we're going to get going with the workshops. In talking with one well owner, we got a little bit of a peek under the tent of some things that might come up in these workshops, which are in bold here. One well owner has Rick, was it 15, 20 wells? 21 wells. So I think one of the things that'll come out with these workshops is how much time can people with a lot of wells have? Because it does take time to install these. So we'll report back to your board on that. Right now, there's a relatively short time frame for well owners to install the flow meters after their well is registered. But realistically, some will need more time just because of the number of wells. Reporting schedules is another issue that may come up, needing refinement. And what I mean by that is extraction reporting. We have a need to get the extraction reporting information in our database so we can prepare the GSA's annual report. And potential for board policy is right now, our indications are that we're not going to have issues with authorities or compliance kicking this program forward, but it could happen in the future. And so we'll once we get this initial outreach completed, we'll talk to your board to see if we do need to make it a more formal board policy. But right now, we're marching ahead as if we're not going to need to do that. For moving on for the hydrogeologic conceptual model update, Sir Fraz has been spending a lot of time on this effort. We're doing very well with reviewing the existing geologic data. Our consultant, GeoSyntech, has input a lot of the information into their 3D model in their database. Richard Slade's group, Richard Slade is a consulting geologist, does a lot of work out in the valley. His group has conducted a very detailed review of 15 well logs to help us better understand the aquifer thicknesses and potential clay zones, roughly between the center of the valley and Magic Mountain. So we've got a lot of information in the tank, if you will. And so we continue to have team meetings with the group as we iterate and refine things. I've got a few updated slides that GeoSyntech put together for us. The green bands on this slide are the existing, they're the geologic cross sections that existed when the GSP was completed. Those more purple color is the new sections, and they've added about 35 miles of geologic sections into the basin. Initial findings can be, I've got a couple slides here that just showing you some of the initial work. So here on the right side, you'll see the yellow color, you'll see the Hauser fault, the brown color underneath. Well, those are being revised based on some actual geologic cross sections. The brown colored section that's being reshaped is what's called the Sunshine Ranch member of the Saugus Formation. It's the lower member of the Saugus Formation. It's not useful particularly from a municipal standpoint, but it's an important part of the geology that we're getting clarified. Here's another example where we can see our older model is needs refinement. Adjustments of the Sunshine Ranch member there, which will affect the other parts of the Saugus Formation too as we do these adjustments. Now, these are done on the computer based on the geologic sections that have been previously published. The work that Richard Slade is doing is going to help us look into particularly complicated areas and make further revisions to these formation picks. The resistivity work has been wrapped up. The report is under final review in the office. Look ahead. This is why it's great that you have your own computer screens in front of you, because I certainly can't read this. But we've added a little bit more detail for the GSP 5-year update look ahead. So for this next year or so, the top bar is the next annual report. The next bar underneath is the construction of these deep monitoring wells that we've talked about. RCA 1, 2, 3, and 4, those are the Department of Water Resources recommended corrective actions that we're chipping away at. The first one is the hydrogeologic conceptual model. As part of our GSP 5-year update, once that's updated, which is planned to wrap up by the end of this month, we'll begin to formulate our draft response to the Department of Water Resources on the potential for subsidence in the valley. Down the road, we'll clarify the sustainable yield. You might be wondering why that's grouped there. That's just where DWR put it with their recommended corrective action. The flow model is, we've got a flow model that's being updated. We'll incorporate the hydrogeologic conceptual model information into the flow model very soon. And then in April, the model is scheduled to be completed. Recommending corrective action 2 is this issue about better defining undesirable results related to chronic lowering of water levels. So we'll be using graphics in the stakeholder workshops and talking about undesirable results related to things like wells drying out. And an outcome of that is expected to be lower water level metrics, at least in certain parts of the basin. On the third is clarifying the sustainable management criteria for contaminated groundwater in the basin. We're planning to address DWR's comments with that through establishment of 2 water quality management zones in the basin. One of the zones would be that area affected by the perchlorate plume, and the other zone would be areas not affected by the perchlorate plume, just to put it simply. The fourth item is gets to what you mentioned, Director Marks. The Department of Water Resources guidance document on interconnected surface waters. We'll evaluate that during the 5-year update process. Moving down, outreach planning, the blue bar down, we're going to be developing the scope of work for the outreach needs and getting contracting going here starting in August. Workshops, we've got 4 workshops planned. The first one is, why are we here? Why is this 5-year update required? And we'll lay out with stakeholders what the plan for the remaining workshops will be. Second workshop is going to be clarifying what constitutes undesirable results. So those will primarily be related to water levels and really making it more clear to the Department of Water Resources that we know at what water levels we truly have undesirable results, what low water levels. Third workshop is going to be describing any updates to the sustainable management criteria. So we'll be using the flow model to simulate any adjustments to pumping, future low water levels, those kinds of things. An outgrowth of that will be some revisions to the sustainable management criteria, say for water levels. And the fourth one is with water quality. So that's that might be last, but it's just as important as all of these. It doesn't require as much advanced work though with the flow model, so that one will be timed towards the latter part. We've got some money in the budget to start drafting the plan, and with board adoption towards the end of 2026. So that's a more detailed look ahead than we've provided you in the past. So I hope that helps. So we've got our October meeting coming up with your board. We'll do more updates. Then we plan to do a presentation on the updated hydrogeologic conceptual model as well. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have. Whoops. 2025. Thank you, Director Natoli.
Keeping them honest, Director. I liked it. Thank you, Rick. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not.
Very good. Board, any questions?
Yeah.
Director Hernandez, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can I see the schedule again? I know we just had it up there for
Sure.
quite some time.
Oh, hang on. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, so I think, sorry, I'm looking at this really close. So we'll have a discussion hopefully in October regarding the initial draft response to DWR's comments? Or do you think not?
We can include that as part of a presentation on the updated hydrogeologic conceptual model. I don't think we're going to need board action on that discussion, but we can certainly provide an update.
Yeah, I think, we've had discussions in the past about DWR's comments and how long we might need to reasonably be able to do them, or what resources might be necessary to reasonably address those comments. So I think it would be helpful to this board that whenever we have addressed some of their comments or done some work to address them, that we understand what came of that, and just like we did today with the Oak study, I think it's always good for us to be aware of the results of what's happening and really the benefit that we see to the GSA when those things are completed, so that we can gain a better understanding of when we have those or your team has those discussions with DWR, that we understand what this board would like to proceed with or what things we might want to consider further.
Understood.
So I get it that may not be polished or that's something that we need to opine on necessarily, but I think it'd be great if we could understand more.
Sure. Yeah,
Thanks.
we can pick that up in October.
Good. Thank you, Director. Director Marks?
Just really move up. I have a comment that staff has put forth a pretty thoughtful work plan here, but DWR seems to be behind schedule and putting out guidance on two major items. One is subsidence. Probably not a major issue for us, but we haven't seen a draft of that, and the concerns are that DWR is going to come up with a pretty hard line when it comes to subsidence, and particularly because it's dealing with folks in the San Joaquin Valley and the impacts that's having on infrastructure such as the State Water Project. Then again, those may be so stringent that it might have some unanticipated impacts on this work schedule. And then certainly the draft on surface water, groundwater interactions, which there's in that draft. That first draft is not even anticipated to occur until probably December of this year. In which case, whatever comes out of that, could potentially have an impact on the schedule and the work efforts that we'll have to undertake, or we have to stop and think, well, is what they're asking for even achievable in this 2027 timeframe? So I appreciate staff's thoughtfulness in putting this together, but I think we all need to be aware of it. We may need to be flexible.
Thank you, Director. Director Gutze?
I'm just laughing because I knew I wanted Dirk to go first because, yeah, you just scared me with that. I agree with both Director Hernandez's comment about a need to understand how it's going with DWR and, where we think they're going, what our thought process is. And then, yeah, Director Smark's commentary on those drafts sounds ominous, honestly. And I know you have a good relationship with DWR and the staff has met with them. Just want to put a thought out there because it does seem like we don't even know where the goalposts are. I could be completely wrong, but it sounds like the goalpost at least keeps moving and they keep adding stuff. And I go back to there's whole communities that could never even do a hydrogeologic conceptual model or, spend $1 million a year on this. So I'm wondering if there is some end goal where DWR could say, okay, if your community is in overdraft, do these things. If your community is not, based on these 5, 10, 15 criteria, you can do this reduced level of effort and, stay on top of it. But I just don't want to be, 10, 15 years now, like analyzing soil particle size and roughness because somebody thought we could do more stuff. It has to, it should stop somewhere. And I don't know who you talk to or at what level. Maybe we need lobbying help from our Sacramento people to just find out, like, where does this end? Because it just seems like we keep doing more and more. And again, grateful that we can do it. And it is useful information to make sure we have an ironclad water supply here in Santa Clarita, but we have an ironclad water supply here in Santa Clarita. We don't have subsidence. We know that we have oak trees on top of hills, and we double check that there's no secret groundwater on top of a hill. So we're doing a lot of double checking. And I would like to know, down the road, can we say, okay, you guys have proven you're good. Do these 15 things every year, check these things, and you're going to be okay. That's enough to show us you're okay. I'd like to know if we can get to that point. Okay. This is because Dirk scared me there. And I appreciate your monitoring of those nuanced things behind the scenes that regular people don't know about. Let's see what else. Oh, on the flow meters, and this goes to the quarterly meetings, I just forget where some of these things are, why we're doing them. Flow meters for non-de minimis wells. So they're generally buying into the concept like, yeah, we'll do it. We haven't had people say, no, we're not doing that. You can't make us.
Not yet.
Okay. And I understand timing in doing it. I mean, either if they have a lot of wells or they just don't have the capacity. Have we offered to do it for them or any alternatives?
We haven't, when you say do it for them, do you mean fund the installation of the meters?
Yeah, and yeah.
No,
Or
we
facilitate somehow.
we haven't offered to spend agency resources on that, no.
Or, but I mean, point them to a contractor, here's where you can get them. Here's 3 contractors that can do it. Go.
We have, Rick, do we have a guidance document on who the flow meter manufacturers are that they could look at?
We can talk after sitting there for a while. I think we decided not to give them specific people to do it because everyone was pretty on board with knowing that they have to install a meter. So we're assuming that they know who they would use or that they have an availability of somebody that can add them. It'll be a timing thing, and then obviously it'll be the expense thing for them is whether or not how fast they can actually do that. And they do have the option, or I think we're planning on giving them the option for the ones that will take longer to be able to give us their data the way they're currently monitoring it, whether it's electronic records or however they're doing it in the meantime while they put their meters on. So we will still get data from them, we hope. But having everyone on the meters might take a little time.
Okay. And then you might want to stay there because I have a related question. If they end up saying, no, never mind, or they don't get around to it or whatever, do we have a way to estimate it so that it doesn't hold up our plan approval? And like what I'm thinking of, and kind of goes back to what I originally said about, a simplified tier of reporting. I mean, we know honestly, I think our pumpers are a tiny, tiny portion of this valley's water use. Can we quantify that either based on acreage, the well data that we have, I don't know, the power demand or any permitting information on that pump size? Can we estimate it and just say, this is what we've got. We don't think these are significant and move on instead of, again, spending years and years and years trying to get data out of somebody who may be 0.01% of our water.
Yeah, and obviously these are meters that are supposed to be using more than 2 acre-feet per year. They have, most of them, we believe, have been reporting to the state or the county.
Right, and they also provide information to the GSA.
So we have some past data that we could look at to see, you know, what they have been using. It doesn't necessarily correlate with what they will use in the future or are
Right.
currently using. But we do know that they use more than, each well would use more than the 2 acre feet. So even if you, so there is a way to kind of say that they're using X amount
Okay.
over time, but you know, we'd rather obviously have
Accurate data.
accurate as much
Right,
as we
right.
can.
Yeah, but I just would hate to get dinged for not being able to get that data. It does sound like so far they're cooperative, but they might not get around to it, especially if they find out it costs money or they're busy,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's 6 that we know of right now. There's 6 entities that have meters, and 5 Point by far has the most. I think the next Disney has 3, and I actually just saw that they've asked the county for a new well, so they'll have 4 if that goes through. But the other ones are 1 or 2. So the combined, the other 5 people don't have half as many as 5 Point. So
Mhm. If we get the big guys.
if we get the
we'll be
big guy
able-
to
Yeah.
cooperate,
Yeah.
we can kind of massage the other numbers maybe to make sure that we have the data that we're looking for.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then last question on the 5-year update. Do we need another public stakeholder group like we had before, or is this just going to be outreach workshops? What's required for the next public engagement?
There's no requirement for another stakeholder advisory process, so our plan would be to not do that, but to do other, you know, what I would call routine outreach that we might do for, say, an urban plan or something like that.
Thank you.
Director Martin?
Thank you, President Gibbs. Rick, you mentioned that there are options like pump characteristics and power consumption. Did we give them those options? And in the interim, while we're waiting for the meters to be installed?
We haven't discussed it with them yet, but we do know that they have been reporting in that way to other entities. So we were just thinking in our, you know, in our mind that we can use that data in the interim. But we haven't discussed that with them yet. We will be having hopefully the individual meetings with the 6 entities in the next 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks.
Do we intend to roll out those options or just keeping those on your in your back
We
pocket?
we are not planning on it. We're planning on telling them they need to put water meters in. But there are forms. So as an example, I've created a form that if, let's say their well goes down and they don't know, or their pump metering system goes down, but they're still pumping. But they don't realize it for 2 months. There's a form that I've made that will allow them to calculate what they think they would have used in those times when the meter was not working. So there's a couple different options that they have, but they will know that we are planning on having them all have meters when all is said and done.
Okay, thank you.
Directors, any more questions? Okay. Seeing none, this was just an information item, so we don't have a vote here. So we can move right on to item number 4, the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Vergoots, I see Mr. Cole caught his breath, has a second win, so we're going to let him go with this one.
And this is going to be very brief and very straightforward. Just want to thank Rick and the team for their efforts.
Absolutely.
You can see those coming to bear in kind of a changing environment, and appreciate the board's input. It helps us guide kind of the future of where we need to head. So thank you all for spending the time with us, and thanks Rick and the staff. That's it. That concludes my report.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments on that item?
There is none.
Okay, very good. Any board questions or comments? No? Okay, very good. That'll take us to item number 5. Any future agenda item requests from the board? Man, you guys are getting off easy today. Okay, hearing none then, we will move on to adjournment. Our next scheduled board meeting will be October 6th, 2025. We are adjourned.